Retail Capital is one of the most dynamic and innovative companies within the South African SME credit sector. Karl is the CEO of Retail Capital, and he is privy to some of the most harrowing data that I've seen on the COVID-19 epidemic and the exact impact that it is having on the entrepreneur sector. Today, we chat to Karl about the data that is emerging and how we should be responding to it.
First of all, let's start with how are you doing, Karl? How's lockdown treating you? Are you still sane? Or are you ready to go running around the streets of your neighborhood, screaming and shouting?
Yeah, it's actually quite an interesting time in that you have all this extra headspace and extra time on your hands. You have time to do things you would never have done before. So actually, at a personal level, it's been quite enjoyable as a break. But you're constantly aware that there's this fire burning outside. You need to keep yourself sane by doing some level of exercise, watching what you eat. It's easy to lose your routine and lose your disciplines in this process. But it's gone well so far, actually.
Okay, and I mean, I think if you look at your role as a family man and you know, but also as the leader of an organization that has been on this rocketing journey of growth, and now suddenly, as you alluded to in the previous conversation that we had in the Heavy Chef channel, a black swan event. How has that affected Retail Capital? And with your particular lens as somebody who's right at the coalface of small business and entrepreneurship, you know, just give us a bit of a sense of the temperature of your immediate ecosystem.
So I think this whole pandemic has completely turned our world upside down. I mean, as early as 6 weeks ago, we were still talking to funders and shareholders about beating budget, flying, profitable, people in a great space. We were just, nothing can go wrong. We were just in an unbelievable space. And I kept saying to people, I'm wondering what's going to happen, what's going to go wrong. So anticipate something. Never in a million years could you go from saying, I'm going to have 100% of my customers trading to having 10% of my customers trading. It's that dramatic. So 9 out of 10 of our customers 6 weeks ago are not currently trading. They're sitting at home trying to work out how to come out the other side of this. So it is dramatic. And I mean, dealing with people's livelihoods here, we're dealing with business owners, entrepreneurs that have been running business for 5, 10, 15, 20 years who cannot pay their staff on a monthly basis, cannot serve their customers unless they're an essential service. So it's wild. And then the impact on the business. So fortunately, we have a fairly young management team. They're up for the challenge. We've been very clear about what it's going to take for our business to survive this pandemic and come out the other side. And we've broken it up. And the first thing you always look at is cash flow. Do you have liquidity? Do you have money in the bank that you can afford to pay your suppliers, pay your rent, pay your staff? Secondly, are you in touch with your customers? So we, as early as sort of 5 weeks ago, started calling on a weekly basis every single one of our customers, our larger customers. And the incredible thing was, and it wasn't so much sort of a formal call. It was an informal call saying, how are you doing? How are you trading? And just the emotional outpouring we got from customers going, thank you for caring. Thank you for phoning to find out how I'm doing. So what we are finding in this pandemic is people are rediscovering how we need each other, which is actually quite incredible.
Yeah,
so
there's a human side to this, which I think is it's heartwarming. You know, in amongst all of the despair, there's also a hugely encouraging aspect, which happens, I guess, when we all have a common enemy, right? We're all brought together and we realize, okay, well, we have to collaborate. We have to be together. We have to connect with each other, you know? in that sort of way, in that human way.
Mm. So one of my good friends is a senior business leader, had some very sage advice early in this process where he said, the only way we all make it through is if everyone feels a little bit of pain. If some people don't feel pain, then they're going to break the system. And that's, I guess, the guiding philosophy is we know our shareholders are going to take pain, we know our customers are taking pain, our staff to some extent will take some pain. If everyone takes a little bit of pain, then I think we'll see it through the other side. But as soon as you have bullying tactics where you insist on being fully paid and at the expense of something else, you break the system.
Yeah, I agree with that. And there's a lot of talk around force majeure and the act of God that's happened, and the fact that it's it's not up to us. This is the circumstances. And I want to segue just into then the information that you're privy to, Karl, which has been mind-blowing in my mind. And I have had a view of the research that you've been doing, and very kind of dipstick research, but absolutely valuable. But with your customers, I mean, the first thing that struck me was that 68.8% of businesses within the lockdown have been forced to cut salaries and or retrench staff. That's incredible. I mean, that's more than 2/3 of your customer base are now essentially taking pain, as you talk about it. And I mean, can you talk to some of the insights that you're seeing in the research that you're getting? I mean, are you seeing, is it just a survival game now? I mean, is it really just about survival? Because I think, we hear the words never waste a good crisis. A lot of people have been talking this through and responding in that way, but the results don't necessarily speak to that, right?
Yeah, so the first phase you're always going to go through is an existential one. How do I make it out the other side? And that's before you can even contemplate pivoting, innovating, sort of trying to readjust your business for new circumstances. I mean, the first thing you have to consider is, I used to get X amount of cash in on a monthly basis. I've got expenses that match it or were close to it. Now I get no revenue and I've still got expenses. So the first thing is purely survival. And that's what we're seeing in these results. I mean, if we go a bit deeper, 15% of businesses are reducing salaries and retrenching staff. So they're taking double pain in that process. 27% are saying they're retrenching staff only, and 58% reducing salaries. So a very large portion of them are doing one or both, retrenching or taking salary cuts or both. So, and they're looking at every single line item in their expense base, from their rent to their supplier payments to their staff payments, just to make it out the other side. So I think only once you can get over that hurdle of saying, I know how long I can last with the cash I've got on hand and with a revised expense structure, only then can you start saying, how do I get through this thing? Looking better than I was before. Do I digitize? Do I innovate? How do I then change? But you got to deal with survival first.
And the survival is actually, it's too much of a challenge for many at the moment. And I mean, part of what you're saying is that there's a lot of businesses that are going to actually shut their doors. And I mean, I'm seeing that personally with the heavy chef community. Many people are reaching out to us and saying, look, advice is futile because, quite frankly, we just don't have a choice. We are shutting our doors. I mean, that's what we're facing here, But for those who can potentially survive, I mean, I think the great advice is really just cut to a cost. Just pull the lever of costs down as far as possible and see where you can bring your income up, which is the innovation, or at least trying to, bring in whatever outstanding invoices there are. What other advice do you have for people? I mean, given the research that you're seeing and the insights and the conversations that you're having.
So, I mean, Storytelling has helped us, and we're in the same position as every one of these business owners, trying to make sure we survive the crisis as a business. And some of the advice I give guys is look after yourself first so you have a clear head. So if you get very emotionally worked up and try and overreact on certain things, you can make bad decisions or rash decisions. So we spoke earlier about trying to keep a routine, trying to keep healthy, trying to keep a clear mind. When you've got people depending on you, and certainly in our business, we sort of 150 people strong, you've got to suspend emotion to an extent so that you can stand up as the leader and trying to separate out fact from noise. The other challenge we have in the space is there's a deluge of information, and a lot of it can be, there's some factual stuff, but there's lots of emotional stuff that's coming through. So to some extent, I've got a bit of COVID-19 fatigue, and I watch less and less on TV channels, and I selectively pick what I want to understand. Trajectory, government's views, those types of things. So, filter out what's important and cut some of the noise, because it's easy to get wrapped up in the stuff. And then, secondly, you've got to think about how do you plan for the worst and then hope for the best. You still need hope in this process. So we planned for the worst. Right up front, we said, if none of our customers trade for 3 months, what does that look like in terms of our cash flow? If it takes another 3 or 6 months to come out the other side, what does that look for cash flow? And we ran some scenarios and said, let's shore up as much as we can. Unfortunately, we're in a position we can do so for a period of time. And now that we're over that hurdle, the next step was getting all our staff aligned. So our teams aligned. So they are now all working remotely. They all have data. They all have laptops. We work through Microsoft Teams. And it's actually been a fairly easy transition, surprisingly. So people have adapted quickly. And we have daily calls with a full leadership team, 20 people. And we have a once a week town hall with all our staff through these digital channels. And it's worked incredibly well. And the funny thing is we probably have as motivated team as we've ever had around the virtual table. And I think what you also realize in the process is how much you miss each other. You take it for granted when you're in the same space. When you're not in the same space, you look forward to that fun and that banter and the stuff that goes with it.
Yeah.
And now that we sort of passed the existential discussion, the guys are getting very innovative around how do we digitize processes? How do we talk to our customers if we can't see them face to face on a virtual basis? I think even our customers are becoming digitally more savvy. So if we had to go to someone who's digitally disconnected, running a restaurant somewhere, all chances are they're talking to their family in different parts of the world through it right now, and they understand how to use it again. So I think there's a general digital awareness that's growing in the whole sector, in the whole market, which is helpful.
Yeah, and that's really encouraging, I guess. I want to I've got 2 more questions for you, Karl. Just the one is really something that's coming about a heck of a lot in our community, and emails and messages that are being directed at me just from business owners is the well-being of their team. Because they're disconnected and the lockdown is, it's highly challenging for some. In addition to this, as some people call it, an infodemic of just, conflicting information and messages from all sources that give you different advice. The kind of mental well-being of your team, how are you finding that, and how are you addressing that challenge in terms of looking after your team and the team well-being?
So I guess when I talk to the leadership team every day, so it's easier to tap into that than the whole business all the time, because that's once a week for us. But on a daily basis, one, I think as a leader, you've got to put your own emotions on the table and tell them how you're feeling. Because I think if you're always only putting up the brave face and you're not vulnerable, then people just hide it. They just put on the brave face on the screen. You know what's happening behind the scenes. So, and we had an exco meeting like yesterday, 8 people. And the first thing we said, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And it wasn't, I have good days and bad days. I have good and bad periods intraday is the new word. So it's a roller coaster ride. It's an emotional roller coaster ride. And yeah, I guess as long as you feel like you're part of something and you're part of a team, you've got something to fall back on. Yeah, I think the big challenge now is loneliness, particularly if you don't have people around you in lockdown. I think it's a big challenge. And yet, I think the people that are around loved ones, I think it's the most valuable time for them. I think to get to know your kids. I mean, many business executives and owners are traveling. They are working 18 hours a day, all that sort of stuff. And now hopefully it's a good thing. They're stuck in the same house and they're discovering a whole lot about themselves and their families, which is a good thing.
We had the most, I mean, Karl, you and I were involved in a partner meeting on Monday, on Easter Monday, where we just checked in with each other and, with Katlejo from Yoko and John from Payfast and all the other partners. And Colin had the most wonderful Zoom bomb with his little kid just climbing onto his lap and getting involved. And it was just so cool to watch. We were talking about all these heady topics. And there's Colin just trying to, contain this wriggling youngster who was all over the screen. So I think you're right. I mean, I'm with my teenage son at the moment, and we're connecting in such a beautiful way. We're doing exercise every day and doing all these, these lessons that we're teaching each other, and it's really, really cool, and it's been amazing for the two of us to bond. And I think just to segue into the last question from that, that's a silver lining, which I think a lot of us didn't expect, and is great. And obviously the flip side of that is if you don't have somebody, if you are truly alone, that it can be quite a depressing time, and just to be able to speak to your feelings. We had a conversation with Mark Rogachnik, the clinical psychologist, on this channel the other day, where he was saying, put your emotions out there, start with the feelings, like actually be vulnerable up front as a leader. And he was saying, you'd be surprised at what comes out, because it's a truth. It's a fact that we're all in this together, and we are all being, confronted by these challenges. So it's a good tactic that you're deploying to start with that. How are you doing? As opposed to just getting straight into the facts,
Sure.
But then my last question for you, Karl, is then around the silver lining, I guess. Are you seeing from an operational perspective some silver linings in amongst this? Is this crisis actually provoking some kind of innovation, or at least efficiencies that you're starting to see within the organization?
So it's been incredible. So I think every business is trying to digitize themselves over time, and so reduce supplier times, improve interaction with customers. And we've sort of had an older stage model, which was a face-to-face visiting customers, and we got a very advanced digital, which is instant funding to business owners. And this has just accelerated that whole process for us. So we are already imagining a world where we don't have any face-to-face with individuals. They can do everything online, automatically done, credit underwritten for large amounts. So it certainly accelerated our digital process. You relook at everything in this process. You reimagine your business. So do we need 2 floors of space to house 100 people in Cape Town? No, it is the reality. So I mean, after your session yesterday evening with Rich Mulholland and the team about remote working, we're reimagining what we look like. Do we create a clubhouse, cut the space down significantly, which brings into question office spaces in general in the future, and things like rush hour traffic. Do we expect to see it? I think you'll see a big lifting of rush hour traffic as people don't work 8 to 5 anymore.
Thank God for that. I'll take that silver lining. Let me tell you, I'm so allergic to traffic. It's frightening.
I mean, I think as a mindset, if anyone thinks they're going to go back to what they had before the lockdown, then one, they're wrong, and two, they haven't learned anything. So I mean, even at a local level, personal level, you start saying, how do I protect the environment better? How do I recycle more? How do I drive less? How do I, so at a personal level, I think you think about what change you experiencing and should adopt going forward. And then as a knock-on effect into your business, don't sit in rush hour traffic, don't create CO2 emissions, don't, how do you build it into your business? Whereas in the past and I read a good article the other day, it's not that people don't want to do that stuff. They're just so busy with other stuff. There's so much noise in the system. This is a great pause, as they call it now, where people can sit and reflect and think about how they should run their own lives going forward.
Yeah. So last question for you, Karl. Have you been bussed yet in your underpants or your pajamas? So, like, I've been bussed twice today.
I haven't been
in
bussed
my
yet.
pajamas.
I'm in my shorts.
Are you?
Other shorts.
Awesome. Yeah. So again, it's the great leveler. I think it doesn't matter who you are. You know, I will bet you like any money that you like that Cyril has been in his underpants in one or two senior cabinet meetings.